Today I'll be comparing my favorite traditional gouache with acrylic gouache by doing two paintings. This page on the left is acrylic gouache and the page on the right is regular gouache. Hello again if you've been here before, but if not, welcome to my channel, Lineal. Let's get started. So the gouache brand that I'll be using is Holbein. It's an amazing manufacturer for professional artist supplies. It's kind of confusing because this company headquarters is located in Japan, but the company is named after a European artist. Many of you ask if I use watercolor in my work. I do, but usually I use this opaque gouache palette by Holbein, and today I'll be trying out their acrylic gouache for the first time. I got their primary color set with 2 additional tubes because they're super pricey, and I didn't know that I love using them, but the popular stationery brand Rifle Paper Co. uses gouache, and I'm pretty sure they usually use acrylic gouache. I'll expand more later. I might use these other art supplies. Everything will be listed below. Let's start off with comparing the paint. I'll be mixing colors I'll be using for both paintings on separate palettes. The black lines are here to show their opacities. So I'll be painting 2 scenes with similar colors. I'll be using blues, greens, and browns. You can see that the regular gouache can get pretty opaque depending on how much water you add into it. So the more water you use with this paint, the more transparent it becomes. But in my experience, these paints are really rich and pigmented, so even if it's really watered down, I still get color. Onto the acrylic gouache. Right off the bat, I noticed it squeezes really easily, so I cut off the footage, but I made a huge mess with the brown. Yep, if anyone walked in, they would have thought, you know. Anyways, since it's acrylic, you don't need to add water to it. The more coats you apply, the more opaque it becomes on paper. So you can tell here on my test sheet that if I apply more paint, then it'll become more opaque, enough to cover the black lines. They maintain a consistent color versus the regular gouache. You can tell there's different saturations even in one stroke. And the acrylic gouache has some shine to it. I'm going to start off with the acrylic gouache painting because the paint will dry out and need to be tossed. So actually, I didn't have fun after this video trying to clean it off my palette. I'd advise you to use a disposable palette, but with regular gouache, it's just like watercolor, so you can keep coming back to rehydrate it. So that would be one of my cons for acrylic gouache because I like to take my time instead of being pressured to use all my paint all at one sitting. But you can achieve amazing solid opaque groups of color with acrylic gouache, whereas with regular gouache, you'll have a harder time doing that because when you lay down one color, you still get variations of that color. So I think depending on the type of style you want to achieve, acrylic gouache may be the way to go. I mentioned previously that Rifle Paper probably uses acrylic gouache. I love Anna Bond's work, and one thing that is so iconic about her style is the opaque flat colors that she uses when she paints flowers and other objects. Even though of course you can shade on top of it, you're able to achieve very simple, clean strokes with acrylic gouache. And I was actually going to take you guys to this restaurant, but it's way too cold outside, so I decided not to go. It's called Freeman's if you want to look it up. One of the things that comes second nature to me is to keep dipping my brush into the water. So I had to consciously stop myself from doing that because you don't need to water down acrylic. You can clean your brush if you want to switch colors, but with this paint, you can just keep layering it. So I'm just going to keep painting and make comments here and there. I love how I'm able to layer light colors on top of other colors easily, especially white, because with traditional gouache, since it reacts to water, sometimes your brush ends up lifting the color and making it muddy rather than lightening a spot up. I think acrylic gouache is definitely worth trying. It's really fun to use, and as you can see right here, I'm able to layer a light color on top of a darker color. It's just a lot of fun, so I would definitely recommend trying it out. So this was my first time using it, and I actually really liked it. Other than making a huge mess and having the paint dry up on me and it being such a messy cleanup, I think that the painting was worth it, and I definitely would use it for more detailed paintings. Okay, so now let's talk about my go-to art medium, traditional gouache. Even though the paint had dried up, I just used a wet brush and rehydrated them. You can see here, even though I'm applying one shade of light blue, there are variations in the color. I want to use the word nuance, but I can't figure out how to phrase it. Anyways, it definitely makes the painting interesting if that's the look you're going for. But there are definitely times where I wanted a large area to be a solid shade of color and wasn't able to achieve that. So you can use regular gouache just like you use watercolor. It's more opaque with less water. So with watercolor, it's usually very light and flowy. You're always able to see the texture of the paper through the paint. But the cool thing about gouache is that it's opaque, so you're able to achieve a variety of details you can't with watercolor. I love playing with gouache. Sometimes it's super watered down, but sometimes I use it without a lot of water. Regular gouache is nice because you can layer dark and light colors on top of each other and achieve lots of shades and depth. I've noticed that I've had trouble going back to white though. So one tip I would give is the same as if you're using watercolor. You can keep the area you want white to be blank without paint and just paint around it. Even though there's white paint, like I said earlier, by layering white paint, sometimes the paint just gets muddy and that's just a tendency of this paint. But I guess you could use a tube of white acrylic for that purpose too. So that's it. I enjoyed using both mediums. I hope you found the next medium you want to try. Let me know in the comments if you have any tips and tricks you want to share. Thank you so much for watching.